Okay, it's 7 o'clock. You can take it away whenever you're ready.
Are we here then? Yeah. Okay. I'm Trish Swagmeyer. And let's see if I can get this to go. And I'm here tonight to talk to you about our groups, our study groups, Money and Politics study, and see if you have any questions about the rationale behind any of the positions statements that Pamela Stroh has drafted for us. Some of our members are here. Jacqueline Nickel. Pamela Stroh chaired the study group all last year and was the one who led us through the original research and then all the writing. She also gave the presentation last December to the league. So Carolyn Kaywood is our coach, and Mary Crutchfield and Jane Newell, both from Richmond Metro, played advisor roles for us too. And I think Janet Boyd is coming, but I don't know if she's on yet. Okay. So what we discovered from looking through back documents of previous attempts to reform Virginia's campaign finance laws is that the league actually has been arguing based on the U.S. position. Virginia has no position of its own. So that was part of the impetus for this study. And obviously, the other part of the impetus for the study is that after 20 years of the league standing up and providing very nice, politely worded testimony that yes, we really should have contribution limits, nothing has actually budged or been done by the General Assembly. So our study divided the topic into 4 general areas: campaign contribution limits and how people are allowed to spend their campaign funds, oversight and enforcement of campaign finance activity, and then also dark money. And for each of these, the way we've structured this is that I'll give you the consensus question that we asked, and then give you the results, what local league people told us they thought about the question, whether they could support it or not. And then finally, the nicely concise position statements that Pamela came up with it. So the first, Dominion is the top corporate contributor to campaign funds for General Assembly members. The problem with this is the potential conflict of interest it creates when you have the General Assembly passing legislation, bills that Dominion has presented to the relevant House and Senate P&E committees, and the General Assembly. The bills will dictate things like the profit margin that the utilities are allowed to take, how their profit is calculated. And because these are monopolies, then whatever decisions the legislators make on that legislation influences the rate most of all of their constituents are having to pay. So there have been repeated attempts to turn off this leaky tap of lots and lots of money flowing into General Assembly members. League members responded affirmatively, most of them, to this question. So we incorporated that in our position statement. Any questions on that? I can't actually see you when you shall have to speak up.
No, there's nothing in chat.
Okay. Most states, and 45 of the 50 states, not including Virginia, have contribution limits of some type. On average, these might be something like $3,000, $5,000. The federal government also has contribution limits. Virginia is one of the 5 states that has none. So we asked, should we have these? And that was unanimously supported. So that's got in. And then should the limit, the cap on these contributions vary according to the type of donor? So should individuals be allowed to give, say, $3,000, and maybe corporations can give $5,000, or PACs can give $5,000? So should we have these staggered according to the potential harm associated with undue influence from each of these sources? And most people also thought that that was a correct thing to do, so that is incorporated. Okay, the restriction on campaign fund expenditures. I think most of us as everyday people think that when we donate to our General Assembly candidate, they're going to use that money to try to win the election. And that's actually not codified. That's how they have to do it in Virginia in any way. In fact, it's legal until they go to close out their campaign fund accounts. It's perfectly legal for somebody to take money from the campaign fund use that then for membership at an exclusive club, or to pay their kids' tuition, or to pay off their own student loan debts. That is all legal until they close out that campaign fund account. So we've had bills come through again year after year after year wanting to put this personal use ban in, and they've been defeated every year. This also was supported, so that goes into the position statement. And it goes in a very implicit way. It's said more plainly in the position in brief, but in the full statement here, it's just that saying you can only use it for this, and that means that you can't use it for anything else. And then this one is, well, how should they be allowed to use their campaign funds? And overwhelming support for the idea that we want this used only for campaigning. There's, if you look at VPAP data, or Virginia Public Access Project data, on how are they actually using this, they're using some for office expenses.
Excuse me, Trish, I'm sorry. There are no slides up. Did you share? No.
There haven't been any?
No.
Oh.
And I just realized you were showing them, so.
Oh, like, oh. Well,
See,
I wish you said something sooner.
Well, I'm sorry. I thought I saw them and then I didn't see them, so I was maybe hallucinating.
Oh, thanks for telling me. Okay, I'll try it again.
Hit the little screen, share screen guy.
That's
the
what
green.
I did, yeah.
Yeah, it's not showing.
Now is it?
Nope.
We could give them to you, Joan, and you could do it.
I was just going to suggest that actually.
Do you
They're
have
posted
them?
on the website if you want to get them from there.
Okay. Let me do that.
I'm not even getting the full Zoom thing now. Once I went out of.
We
there.
could hear you fine, Trish. Everything you
Okay.
said was very clear. It's just nice. The slides are nice to work off of, but you've done them.
Yeah, but you haven't been able to see the position statement. Okay, do you want me to go on or not?
Why don't you give just a minute
Okay.
for Joan to pull up the slides?
All right.
Yeah, I'm not seeing the slides on the website. So hold on, I'm going back.
It should be incorporated in when on the program stuff.
Yep.
Or Trish could email them real quick to Joan.
Yeah, why don't you go ahead and do that real quick, Trish?
Yeah, that would be a lot faster because they are not.
Okay. Let me forward this one.
Because they opened up nicely in the email. I got it.
Let me know when you send them.
It's just not sending.
I'm trying to send them to.
My goodness, there are computer monsters everywhere. You should get a
You should
PowerPoint.
get it. You should get it shortly. I forgot to put any sort of message in the message line, but you should get it as an attachment, Joan.
Okay, here we go. All right. Okie dokie, we're opening. Here we go. Da, 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 da. All right.
We're on slide 8.
Okay, can you all see my screen?
Yay.
Yes.
Okay. I swear I thought I saw them in the beginning. They took my eye off the ball and they were gone. So either that or there's monsters. Okay. So we're down to 8. Okay, restrictions on campaign finance.
Uh-huh.
Okie doke, you're all set.
Wait a minute.
All right,
There.
lots of things are going on here tonight.
Okay. That's it.
Yeah,
All right.
go
So,
ahead. I got it up. Go ahead, I'm there.
all right.
We don't see the slides again.
Slides
Joan.
just disappeared.
I know. My computer went wacky. Here we go. All right, all good. Okay, you see him?
Yes.
Yes,
Okay, then go ahead, take it away.
Trish.
Not seeing
Trish,
them.
are you frozen?
Let me go from my slides and you can advance when you want, okay? Because I'm not seeing your slides.
Oh, no.
I see it.
There's something with your computer, Trish. We're on number 8, so
Yeah,
just
okay.
8 and tell me
I'll
when.
go ahead and work from my number 8
Yep.
rather than, okay. All right. So we've got this personal use ban on restrictions on expenditures. And then we've got a something that says that we want campaign funds to be spent just on campaigning. I think that we've covered that one already. And then there was the question of, okay, should people who are responsible for the care of children or an aging parent or any other kind of dependent be able to use their campaign funds to cover the expenses that they incur when they go to campaign at weekend or nighttime or any kind of other irregular events. And 11 of the 12 leagues supported that. Okay, next slide.
Go ahead.
Except I'm not getting mine. Okay. Then there is a a definite lack of diversity, economic diversity at the federal level, where almost all our office holders are members of Congress, are very, very wealthy people. The same kind of thing is happening or happens at the General Assembly. We often have attorneys representing us. To have a representative democracy, though, you actually need to have people from lower income. You need to have working class people, and not everyone can afford to take time off in order to engage in a campaign. So we asked whether we should follow the state of Washington and federal laws and go ahead and allow people to use their funds to reimburse themselves for the wages they lose as a direct result of campaigning. So if you normally work Saturday afternoons and you have to go to a fundraiser, is it okay for you to use your campaign funds to reimburse yourself for the hours that you lost from work? And most people agreed with that. There was, however, some concern for abuse of this, and that's why we went back through. State of Washington allows it, as I said, the federal government allows it. Some other states may also too, but we were using Washington as one of our model states because they do so well on measures of campaign finance reforms. And in any case, we have added an appendix to the report that shows people what federal law looks like, what kinds of framework they have, what you have to do in order to be able to qualify this. Also, how much money have people actually been using out of their campaign funds to reimburse themselves for lost wages. And it's really not as much as you might think it is. So we've gone on with that, and that's within our position statement now too. And then this one was kind of a weird question.
Next slide, right, Trish?
Yes. This is kind of a weird question because it had to do with comments that General Assembly members have made when posed with these bills, as in sometimes they say, well, we're paid so little. Or they say, well, I need to use the campaign funds for office expenses, or I need to use them for the expenses associated with getting to General Assembly during the months that it's in session or when it's in special session. So we looked back at this McAuliffe Ethics Committee. This was a committee put together after the Rolex watches and the Hermitage Country Clubs that hit the news in about 2014, shortly after I moved here. They said that this whole distinction, sometimes legislators say, well, we only have salaries of $18,000 a year, that's really not completely transparent, because in addition to the $18,000, they're also paid a comparable amount in legislative office expenses, except that most of them choose just to get this put in as income. They pay taxes on it, but then they're allowed to spend this any way they want to. There's nothing vouchered about the system. So the McAuliffe Ethics Committee had said, look, okay, just go ahead, take the $36,000 that you're really being paid as income, then we'll add an office expense allowance that's vouchered, and then you won't have to use your campaign funds in order to do this. So anyway, I think it was too complicated to ask that question. People didn't really understand the rationale, and one person one group wrote, this really doesn't seem as if it fits with this study. And I think that I kind of agree with that, because it's more like a negotiating point, as if we said to General Assembly members, hey, you give us contribution limits and a personal use ban, and we'll give you more money as salary. It's a negotiation, and we're not in a position to do that anyway. So we have nothing covering that consensus question in our position statement. And now moving on to the next slide. This one, we're jumping, to oversight and enforcement. Jacqueline did most of the work on this. There are a number of deficiencies that she outlined in the study. Lack of transparency, lack of accountability. Actually, the transparency, not so much, but the accountability, definitely. The code says, for example, in terms of expenditures, that every time they turn in an expenditure, to report it, they're expected to give a brief summary of the purpose. What the Department of Elections, which is the agency that oversees campaign finance, says to them, though, is simply provide a description of the item or service, and then they accept things like, well, here's a receipt for a Hilton room. You don't know why they were at the Hilton, or here's a meal, or here's travel, but you don't know why they're doing that. So there's little accountability. The Department of Elections also doesn't have any independent ability to conduct investigations of campaign finance irregularities. They have very limited sanctioning power. So there's definitely a need for additional oversight and enforcement of this. And that consensus question got unanimous support. And then moving on to the next one, this is just, should this agency be independent? When you think of Virginia has elections every year, what the Department of Elections already handles, it's overseeing the operations of all the registrar's office and the local election officials, handling all the voter registration. And people in general just thought that this ought to be given off to a separate agency, segregated from the part of the Department of Elections that deals with voting and voter registration, and be an independent. So that is what we added. And then our final section is on dark money. This is mainly about limiting the ability of nonprofit groups, including things like unions. The league would actually fall into one of these groups. And then these innocuous sounding things like American Promise, PACs, super PACs, and so on, that you don't know who actually is behind that money. And the dark money comes in when these nonprofit groups then pay for, either give campaign contributions in this state, or they pay for ads. And you don't really know anything about that group. You don't know the individuals behind it. And in general, everybody agreed with the idea that there should be more disclosure of who is behind the money that is being spent on our elections. So we have this in our position statement that we should restrict it by imposing this transparency requirement. And then the next one, also on dark money, that one didn't pass. I mean, we just had very weak support for it, and I think it was because we didn't do a good enough job of explaining what we were talking about here. It has to do with independent expenditures. The Supreme Court Citizen United ruling in 2010 that said, well, yes, you can limit contributions, but you can't limit the amount of money spent independently of a candidate's campaign. And so as long as you don't have any coordination of ad placements or ad campaigns or anything like that between the candidate's campaign staff and the group, then you can essentially do anything, spend as much money as you can. So the key there is having more say over what exactly constitutes coordination between the candidates and these nonprofit groups. So, but we don't have any position on that now. And then I think this is the last one. Yeah. Federal law prohibits foreign individuals and foreign governments from making campaign contributions and obviously from interfering with their state elections. But this money still sneaks in because all you have to do is give to one of these groups or give to someone else who is an American citizen who then gives to one of the groups and filter the money through that way. And this is where, again, essentially all you can do to get around that is through donor disclosure. So that one is the last one, and that was also unanimously supported. Okay,
I'm just gonna flip through the ones that we didn't see just in case.
that's
Just-
good.
This was the first one to ban utilities.
Yes.
Limits. Okay. Number 7. And then we started in on number 8. So I just wanted to show you the first 7 again.
Yeah, this will be helpful, Joan, for people who listen to the recording. They'll have the complete set of the slides. Thank you.
Yeah.
Oh, I forgot about that. That's even worse.
No, it's even better. They'll be able to see the slides. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing now. I don't see any. Let's see. We got one more question that popped in, or one comment. I cannot scroll down tonight because computers are, oh, good. Okay. Does anybody have any questions? I don't see any questions in chat. I think Beth.
I was just curious, when these issues come up before the General Assembly, is it usually pretty unanimous that both Democrats and Republicans are opposed to any sort of limitation on their ability to raise and use funds? Or do we have champions on either or both sides? How does it usually break down in the General Assembly?
Trish, I'll take this quickly and then you probably
Thank
will
you.
add on to that. I would say generally you get a Democrat to be the one to bring up the issue. Occasionally we do get Republican support, and occasionally is probably not strong enough. I think in most cases we work real hard to get some bipartisan support, but never from leadership. That's where the problem becomes, particularly in the House side. Gilbert was very opposed to any sort of restrictions on campaign financing. So that was probably the biggest impediment. We'll see what the legislature looks like, the General Assembly looks like after the election, because there may be an opportunity to do something, but it was pretty consistent. We could get a few things through the Senate, but rarely were we able to get anything through the House. I'll defer to you, Jack or Jacqueline.
Yes, it was all the bills this past year. It was a blowout, pretty much. I mean, it was just very discouraging. There was a lot of effort made, not just by Democrats, but by advocacy groups, and everything was just shut out. I think Janet has discuss that in more detail, but it was, and I would definitely say it was very biased, so that Republicans were generally against everything, and I don't know. It's hard to know the exact numbers, but I really would say the Democrats were pro or campaign finance reform, and but we couldn't get anything past Republicans. That's my take.
Thank you. I didn't know sometimes incumbents on both sides are very determined to protect their rights and their money. So thank you.
I think, Beth, you are correct. I mean, your impression is not altogether wrong in that I guess the pure situation was when both the House and the Senate were under the leadership of the Democrats. We couldn't get it through then either.
Okay.
So I think the incumbents are reluctant. That being said, I think there are a few issues that could be managed through legislation. And there were Democrats that were trying to push them through, and some of it did make it through the Senate during this last session, but there was just no way to get it through. Gilbert was very much opposed to it.
Okay, thank you.
Denise?
I was going to ditto, Beth, what you said. Plus, it's not just incumbents, but all of you know, all the seats are up for election.
Yeah.
So we know a lot of money is going to flow very heavily in Virginia. And they want this to continue to be the Cayman Islands. No campaign, they want money flowing because they want to get elected. I think regardless of who takes over, always remember, we don't have the stench of partisanship. So our issues are good for all, because we should not have, again, money in politics and deciding, all of that. But there was no diet, no true diet. You've got a little bit that happened in the Senate, but I don't think there was any diet for any type of campaign finance reform, simply because all the elections were up. We will see what happens with incumbents and whoever comes in new, but that's all I wanted to share. Beth, I had the same, concern too.
Carolyn has a question. What are you thinking of or prioritizing for 2024? Oh, Brenda, did you want to say something else? I'm sorry. You're muted.
In the big scheme of things, looking at SCOTUS and everything and their ethics and stuff, I don't know how much is going to change here, because things flow from the top down. We can do the best we can here and we'll keep muddling up. But I look at the higher authority on things and I'm thinking it's a long road to go.
Oh, yeah. But that's never stopped us.
But that's my 2 cents worth.
Carolyn wants to know, what are you thinking or prioritizing for 2024? And I think she means in terms of legislative priorities. Assuming this passes, what would then be your legislative priorities? Or do you know?
I'm unfrozen finally. I did thaw. Zoom allowed me. I think the easiest one should be the personal use ban, and the that one probably. They have been going for the last 2 years for a bill that has a personal use ban, and also which made it through the Senate this time, but not the House P&E committee. That's happened twice now, but I think it probably will get closer. I think it might, on the optimistic side, given that some of the most senior leaders of the General Assembly who took in lots and lots and lots of money and then spread it around. With them gone, it'll be interesting to see whether that actually could change anything. But I think the personal use ban, which right now, as it stands, is coupled with acceptable use list that resembles what the federal government has, which doesn't by any means restrict it to campaign activities. It allows all this money to flow back to the party, which is where we are now.
Jacqueline?
Yeah, I think on a philosophical note that until people, until constituents make it important, until the, and then I think it's also not going to have as much effect on legislators. And what's kind of interesting, because constituents really do care, red and blue. Nobody likes this, you know, the way it goes. They don't want, you know, anyway, I think you all know what I'm talking about. So that's, I think, a longer term issue, is to get it, you know, a higher profile, get this issue higher profile in the constituents' minds, so that it becomes a voting issue. Because then I just don't see, you know, in terms of the greed problem, I don't see how the legislators are going to get, maybe even Democrats we're going to make much progress. But when they start caring, because if voters care, then maybe there's some hope.
Well, that leads to Carolyn's other question about how will the known retirements affect the odds. I think that will depend on who gets in, right? Unless you have something else to add to that.
I agree.
Yes.
Okay, I don't see any hands, and I don't see anything in chat. Last call for questions. My phone is quacking, I'm sorry. My phone quacks, you know, this is one of my secrets. It's been a night, but thank you all. I don't see any other.
Great study, really important work.
Yeah. And despite computer monsters, we got through it. So I thank you all, and we'll be seeing you all at convention. Thank you for the hard work.
Thanks, Trish, for presenting. Thank you so much.
Thanks. Sorry about the freezing computer.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks.